Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting day of masterclasses hosted by the IAPC&M. I'm your host, Elena Nedeva, APC, and I'm delighted to be here with you. In celebration of World Mental Health Day on October 10th, we've dedicated today to 3 inspiring series designed to help you strengthen your own emotional awareness and support your clients more effectively. We start the day with Teresa Joy Mack, also known as TJ, and her masterclass exploring the often overlooked forms of grief that don't involve death, from job loss and divorce to health diagnosis and life transitions. TJ is a grief consultant, educator, and business coach who specializes in supporting individuals and organizations through loss, transition, and workplace challenges. As a qualified suicide first aider with training in grief recovery and edu therapy, she offers corporate training, programmed one-to-one coaching and mentoring services. Her signature half-day workshop dealing with grief and accompanying book provide practical tools for understanding and navigating grief in all forms. TJ also supports coaches in developing their skills to work with bereaved clients and clients who have experienced trauma. As a founder of Craft Conscious CIC, she combines professional expertise with lived experience to create safe, inclusive environments where people feel supported to share their experiences without judgment. Before I pass the microphone to TJ, this is a quick reminder that this masterclass is recorded. So to ensure the quality of the recording, please mute your microphones, but keep your videos on. We love to interact and see your beautiful faces. The session today is going to be interactive. So please feel free to unmute yourselves when you would like to ask a question or put it in the chat. I'll be very happy to read it out for everyone. You're also encouraged to fill in your CPD logs with takeaways and ideas. Without further ado, please grab your notepads, sit back, listen, and enjoy. So, welcome, TJ. It's such a pleasure to welcome you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited, and I wonder, people might think, how can you be excited about grief? And yeah, grief is a sad thing, but I'm really excited because it has helped me so much training in grief, and I hope that people are getting a lot out of this masterclass and really go away with new thoughts and hopefully feeling a bit comforted as well.
So, Teresa, I will start with my first question. When people think of grief, they typically think of death. What do you mean by hidden grief?
So I don't want to use a bit too much jargon, but I will explain the word. So we have anticipatory grief and we have disenfranchised grief. And when I trained in grief recovery and shared that with people, their first reaction was like, oh yeah, bereavement is hard. And I have a list with over 60 losses now that are grief. So part for anticipatory grief, for example, is grief that we know a loss we might know has happened, is going to happen. So someone is going to die, but it hasn't happened yet. Or we're going to lose our job. The company said, sorry, we have to make you all redundant. And people often, they're so busy with what is going to happen that they don't really realize the symptoms of grief. And then disenfranchised grief is grief we can't really share. So someone goes to prison, for example, and people go like, oh, are you not glad if it's like a relationship that broke down and that he's gone? But you might actually feel, yeah, but I had all these hopes and dreams and expectations and I wasn't prepared for that. Or the children we never had is disenfranchised grief. People say, oh my God, you're so lucky you don't have any kids. And people don't acknowledge that there's a lot of grief, loss of youth, loss of health, all these things that people don't really are prepared. They don't know how to deal with it. where bereavement is like someone dies, you're sad, and even there are exceptions, because if you're estranged from your parents and they die, it's so much more complicated than just someone dying who you loved, and then you can fully acknowledge the grief.
Please, can you share a personal example of when you experienced grief that wasn't related to death?
Yeah. So part of my training, when I did that in 2016, the trainer said, before you help other people, you have to go through the process yourself. And I was like, I don't have any losses. I'm just here to help my friend. Her son died in 2012, and 3 years later, she still received very weird comments. And after one particular one, I thought, I want to help people like her. And I'm a teacher for adults. I'm a mixed media artist. And I thought that's why my company is called Craft Conscious, because I thought I just do craft sessions for bereaved people and they can come together and they don't have to listen to weird comments. So I'm in this training, and what I learned is that my childhood was full of losses. I have a lot of childhood trauma, and it's loss of control over your body, loss of your childhood innocence, loss of trust. And that was my first experience. But personally, I would have never thought of grief, and I would have never looked for help with a grief specialist for my childhood trauma. And that was quite an eye-opener. And so I think there's a lot of help out for bereaved people. But for people who have hidden grief, there is not so much. And that was one of the reasons I really wanted to do this masterclass.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned relationship changes. How can things like menopause or illness create grief within partnerships?
Yeah. So I'm postmenopausal now, but when I started a few years ago, I thought I'm losing my mind, and I don't know if anybody can relate to that. That I wasn't prepared for the changes. I thought I have to give my job up, and I thought I was going crazy. And you become a different person, and also it happens for most women, not everybody, some are really young, but most women like 40s, 50s. And that's a point where you look back, you're like, oh, I raised the kids. What have I done with my life? What can I still do? Or chronic illness. I have a lot of things I can't do no longer. I can't travel to visit my parents. I can't spontaneously go to the cinema or meet. I never know how I feel. And we are just not the same person that we were. And I mentioned earlier hopes, dreams, and expectations. So people are, not only us, but other people are then confronted with, you are a different person to what I thought you were, or how I thought our life and our future will be together. And that is a loss, and that's grief.
And something comes to mind about grief parents. Can you tell us about the grief parents' experience when children leave home, particularly for single women who need to redefine their lives?
So at the moment, I had a lot of friends on Facebook share that their kids started university, and everybody is excited. And you don't want to burden your kids with your grief that you miss them. But these mostly moms shared that they feel a bit lost because their kid went off to uni, is excited, and they don't text, they don't phone. They might bring their washing home in a month's time or so, but it's a massive change from the routine they had before. And I was a single parent, and if you give a lot, because you have to be maybe mum and dad for whatever reasons, you're widowed or divorced, and you have to give your child a lot of support, and all of a sudden that is gone. And maybe you neglected a little bit having friends or your own needs. And we say in our training, every change is a loss. So even the change we decide ourselves, the change we're excited about, it has an element of grief. And I'm like, oh, what do I do now that they're gone? I have maybe more time. And also, there's a really good book, The Grieving Brain, it's called, I think. And it says that we have these neural pathways, and we're used to like a routine. And if that routine changes, the brain hasn't changed yet. We still expect the routine. So that's why we feel lost. So there's actually a physical reason for grief as well. It's not just emotional, but the brain has to relearn that this person, although they're still in our life, but we get up in the morning and maybe ask them, do you want a cup of tea? We wake up and realize, oh, they're not there anymore. And we need to get used to the new routine and the new life.
Mhm. And what about chronic illness or receiving a late diagnosis? What's lost there?
So, late diagnosis, that refers to autism and ADHD. So I was diagnosed with ADHD in 2022 and as autistic in 2023. And right now that happens to a lot of women. So menopause can bring out your symptoms more, or your kids are diagnosed and you go, yeah, but that's how I was when I was a little child. And they are classed as disabilities like chronic illness. And with the late diagnosis, I grieved for 6 months after I got my diagnosis. And again, it's something I pursued myself and I was relieved. I was actually happy that yeah, I'm not just crazy, there's a medical label for this. And then it hit me so hard that what could have been. Like, I remember when I was young, I applied to a university and I had the papers to fill in, and then I realized I'm a person who does things last minute. There is no way I can go to university. And now I think like, oh, with the right support, I could have gone on this path. And chronic illness, again, it can happen to anybody. I've got ME/CFS and I've got long COVID, so my voice changes a lot. And it's nothing any of us, I believe, is prepared. That's something that happens to other people. So any health issues or loss of youth, maybe you wanted to get pregnant and then you enter menopause and that dream is not happening anymore. And I feel there is no real room. Like, people are told, oh, it's a trend now with ADHD. Oh, everybody is a bit. So it's always this dismissive approach of people and not being able to say, well, you know what, actually, I'm really grieving this.
Mm. And job loss is something many people experience. Why is that a form of grief rather than just a disappointment?
Yeah. So disappointment can be one of the emotions of grieving. So there's, you can be sad, you can be disappointed. There is like a whole emotion wheel. People can experience grief in many different emotions, but disappointment is more like, oh, I didn't get into my first choice of university, but then I can go into the second one. So it's more short-lived, and it's like, yeah, that was my expectations. But when I lose my jobs, I might have developed friendships. I developed a routine. I drive the same way every day. I can just go in with my pass and sit on my desk. All of a sudden, I'm cut off this. I'm cut off the people. I'm cut off my routine, and I just don't have the right to be there anymore. And again, we might even chose to find another job. And that's where I think people don't understand why they're grieving, because they say, well, actually, I'm glad I don't have to see this manager anymore. But again, I cannot say that often enough. Every change is a loss, and loss is grief. And people lose their jobs, probably everybody loses a job during their lifetime. So it's like, oh, it can't be a big deal. But it's like these little micro losses that accumulate, and then retirement is another one. We might like, oh yeah, great, I don't have to go to work anymore. But we've lost the access to people and maybe even our identity if that job was so important to us.
Previously, you mentioned family revelations. Discovering a parent has narcissistic traits, or families splitting over Brexit or political views, or children coming out as trans. How do these create grief?
Yeah. Again, I think it's expectations we have on people, or we think we know someone. And Brexit was in the UK one of the examples. In America is Trump. And through Facebook, people can group in can meet in groups with total strangers and exchange their experiences. So I found out last year that I believe that my mom is a covert narcissist. So you have an overt narcissist who is very open in their aggression and they shout and they slam doors. And then the covert one is more the like, oh, poor me, and I sacrificed everything for you. And I thought I had a good relationship with my mom during my life, and that was such a shock. Or when people have to vote for a political party and then they're like, I didn't think that these were your values, so they can't stand with being with this person anymore because it goes to our core. And then if you have a child that tells you I'm gay, I'm trans or so, and then you have family members who maybe never showed any signs of being homophobic or so, and all of a sudden they criticize your child, and it's about loyalty, and it's like your whole world can be in turmoil because you think, oh, I thought you loved me. And trans children also like, oh, you loved me when I was the person you wanted me to be, but now I'm coming out as the person I want to be, and I want you to use different pronouns or a different name. And it's again dismissed and refused. So the pain often doesn't come from the situation, it comes more from us not being heard and not being seen as the people we are.
And continuing to touch on personal stories, you, as long as you don't mind me asking, of course, you mentioned that you were a single parent, and please talk to us about why inappropriate comments from family members can be so hurtful.
I think we need to be heard and we need to be seen. People don't want to be fixed. And I had a situation like I love my stepdaughter. She's absolutely amazing. But when she was little, I did a lot of childcare for her, taking her to school, picking her up. And as a not prepared step parent, I really struggled. And I shared that with my brother. And he was just like, yeah, but you knew he had a child when you met him, or, when you got together. And is this being dismissed and not having the room to just share? Because we struggle with everything. I mean, who hasn't been really excited to start a new job? And then after a few weeks, you go like, oh, that wasn't how I expected it, or it's more stressful. Or you enter into a relationship and you're really excited to become a step parent. And then you're stressed and the child turns around and said, well, you're not my mom or you're not my dad and you can't tell me what to do. And you don't like, oh, I'm struggling with this. And all you want is to someone acknowledge that it's actually really hard. And if that doesn't happen, it's like insult to injury. You're already struggling with the situation. And I want to stress how we sometimes do this to ourselves. And we then shame ourselves. And I just want to encourage everybody to acknowledge you're already dealing with life is hard and life is difficult. And just to be really kind to ourselves and to others, because we don't want to add to the grief and the stress that's already there.
Yeah, these are words to remember. So how do you, in your coaching, help people distinguish between disappointment and grief?
So grief often has physical manifestations. So backache, burnout. People don't think of grief like that. And like I said earlier, disappointment might be I didn't get into the first choice of my university, but you get over it quicker. But grief is something that needs to be processed. It needs to be worked through. People often say time heals, but that's actually not true. Like if I break my arm, it's not time that heals, it's the body. Like it grows the bone together, it makes new blood vessels or whatever. And we just think, oh, you take the cast off after 6 weeks, you're healed. But it wasn't time. Time just passed. And although, like I said, disappointment can be a form of grief, but it's mostly short term and you get over it, where grief can have like change people's behavior and have really long lasting effects.
So I hear you encourage us to feel anger than grief. What do you mean by that?
So if you go on Facebook, people have all these angry comments. You can put a post out or you share with your friends and you go like, oh my God, you won't believe what my auntie said or what they did. And they go like, oh yeah, that's unbelievable. And you're so right. And you know, it's like cathartic and we're really encouraged to share our anger. But if you say like, oh, I broke up with this guy and he had a lot of red flags, and people would go like, oh yeah, he was such, was horrible, and be glad, be happy, you let go of him, and there are other fish in the sea, and at least you don't have to spend the rest of, all these things that people say. And we feel ambivalent, we feel maybe relief, and we feel sadness because at some point we probably loved the guy and we had dreams and hopes and expectations for the future, and there just doesn't seem to be any room. It's always like at least, or be grateful for, or whatever. It seems people need to manage our grief, but when we are angry, they're like, oh, I join in and encourage us to really express that and live that, and it's not really processing anything.
Thank you. Now that I get to think about it, actually, grief is everywhere. And I think we are encouraged to be more careful how we approach the world. And grief is often hidden. What should we absolutely not say to someone who is experiencing hidden grief?
So I touched a little bit on this, what people say, like, oh, at least you, and then they find a silver lining for you. So anything that even might be logically right is not going to touch the grief, because it's like two people. Well, the logic is here, but the grief is in your heart. And it's like someone is driving on the motorway and I'm on the country lane and they want to meet. They're never going to meet. They're like, where are you? I want to go to this cafe and meet you. And it's like, yeah, but I'm driving here. I can see the trees. And so we're just missing the point, because you might be logically right, but you're never going to touch this person's grief because we feel this emotionally, not logically. And it starts from when you're a child. You're like, you lose your favorite teddy and it smells like your mom. And they go, yeah, but we can buy you another one. So there are a lot of myths about grief, like replace the loss. Your dog dies. Oh, when are you getting another one? Because people are missing the point. Or a teenager, first love. As adults, we all know they're not going to stay together till their death. But for the teenager, that was their first love, and they're like heartbroken. And you go like, oh, you know what? Enough fish in the sea. You will, and of course you're right, but you're missing how sad and heartbroken they feel. So just watch out. And I have said these things before my training, and I cringe of the things. So I'm not better, or that I wasn't more knowledgeable. It's the things we hand down from generation to generation. And it's just like, you might be right, but you're not really helpful in that moment.
So what would you recommend in those moments of hidden grief?
You don't have to be trained. You just have to be what we call a heart with ears. And it's okay to say, I don't know what to say, but you can create a safe space just to give the person the opportunity to share. And I would recommend to differentiate between adults and children. So if a child is crying, they often want a hug, especially because they're probably in the vicinity of someone they trust. If you have a friend, especially if you're not really that close to them and they start to cry, please don't touch them. Don't put your hand on their knee, because it startles adults and they become aware of what they're doing and often feel embarrassed. So you can hand them a tissue, or, just sit with them. As adults, we just want this safe space. We just want to be heard and seen and not fixed. There's nothing wrong with grievers. They don't need to be fixed. You can just be there. And I have to have a disclaimer. Autistic or people with ADHD often then share their own story, and people go like, oh, they're making that about themselves. And that's not the case. If a neurodivergent person starts to like, oh yeah, that happened to me as well, or share something similar, it's two things. They want to show that I get you, I hear you. And they also want to make sure is that what you're talking about? Have I understood you right? So I wouldn't necessarily think if the other person then tries to share their experience, which is similar, that they are not listening and then they want to make it about themselves. But you can also say, look, this is not working for me, or can I just share what's going on for me? So that's a bit tips for the listener, but for the speaker. But as a listener, you don't have to know how to deal with grief or try to fix them because there is nothing to fix. All you have to do is be there and listen.
Okay, so is this what you mean by a heart with ears?
Yeah, yeah. Just be yourself. Just be the heart and listen. And we have two ears and one mouth, so listen more than speak. And I know with ADHD sometimes that can be really difficult, to be honest.
Yeah. So for coaches listening today, how they can better recognize and support clients experiencing non-death losses.
So now that you've heard a little bit what I explained, just be aware that bereavement is not the only loss. And I would listen to what people don't say. So if they just casually mention, oh yeah, I've been made redundant, and then go over to the next problem or so, maybe lead them back a bit and go, oh, okay, what happened? That's a good question. What happened? And what do you think about this? What does that mean for you? And so don't be afraid to ask for more information, for clarifying questions. And I would also listen out for any accidents they had. So often when something traumatic, like a loss happens, people become ill, like they get the flu or because the stress lowers the immune system. They might have accidents or near accidents, like, oh yeah, I wasn't concentrating and nearly took right of way for that car and they nearly crushed into me. Oh, I started having backache and I don't, so things they don't connect with losses, physical manifestation, changes of behavior as well. If they say, yeah, I know I probably shouldn't, but I started having a glass of wine every evening, or they go running. So even things that seems to be positive, any change in behavior, listen out for that and look at them. Do they use that as a coping mechanism, not to have to deal with their emotions? Or is it just what they did anyway before? Because they might not be able to connect their behavior with any grief they have.
Mm-hmm. I see. So what would you like people that attended today to take away from this masterclass?
The main thing I think is recognize that any change is a loss. And that might not land with people right. And they might like, nah, I don't believe that. So just have an open mind, explore that a little bit for yourself. Even the changes we choose, even getting married and you're excited, you might lose meeting your friends every week because now you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I don't have that single life anymore. So even happy occasions can carry a loss in them. You don't need to be trained to help anybody. Be a heart with ears and also be emotionally honest yourself. If you want to share your loss with someone, don't be afraid to say, please just listen. I don't need to be fixed. I'm just sad and I just want to share and I just need someone who's listening to me. And have a look at situations where you thought you were just stressed or where you feel burnt out. What happened at that moment in time? Maybe when your chronic illness started or when you started spending a lot of money to cope. Just look at it without judgment for yourself and other people as well and explore a little bit. Were there maybe changes in my life that I was grieving rather than just stressed? And yeah, I think that would be the main points I want people to take away.
Mm-hmm. And how can people learn more about supporting themselves and others through hidden grief?
So I wrote a book dealing with grief, so they can have a read in there. I've got lots of self-help tips and tips for the listener, and it's mostly written for people who are bereaved, like should you take kids to the funeral, and practical things as well, what you have to do in the UK. Work with someone who is a coach, a grief specialist. There is training, like I did some training with David Kessler. He does like free webinars as well, how to support people. And it's a bit of a taboo. I think we say, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. Feelings internalized, never expressed. We have this like, drink tea and carry on. You know, it's our culture, and other cultures have that as well. I grew up in Germany. I don't think Germans are any better in dealing with grief than British people. And it's like, have an open mind. And if you feel that that resonates with you, and maybe the things you thought were just stress or sudden illness or so, approach this and ask yourself, was I actually grieving? And then just look on the internet and find more information.
Thank you, Teresa. I actually inserted links to your book for
Thank
everyone
you.
in the chat so they can access it. Later on, we will mention how the audience can maintain contact with you if they wish. But I see now we have quite a few questions in the chat box. So if you don't mind, if people attending, you can please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask the questions directly. I'll jump to the question where you touched on. There was somebody, I think Cynthia, who asked about where you received your training on grief from. So could you elaborate more? I heard you say somebody, but please elaborate.
Yeah, so in 2016, I did Grief Recovery Method. It's an evidence-based program from America. And then in 2020, I did Advanced Grief Recovery. And then in 2022, I did EDU therapy, which is taught from a UK organization. So these are amazing programs. I don't teach these programs because they're meant to, you have like 8 sessions and you lead people through the process and then they can work on their own. Because I work mostly with people who have experienced significant childhood trauma, they need more support. So I still use tools and knowledge from my grief training, but I don't offer this specific format anymore. There is an organization, Grief Specialists, .org. So you might find people you can work with there, or if you go to EDU therapy or grief recovery method in America, you can still train with them.
Just one correction from my side. The question was asked by Kalamadi, not Cynthia, so apologies. Next question is from Pravda Miteva. Pravda, do you want to unmute yourself and ask away?
Yes, sure. Hello. Thank you for a very informative session and sharing personal experiences. Yes, I just lost my job and we knew that we're going through cuts since January, but this happened in September. And although it was kind of expected, I didn't expect to feel such a grief of losing my job. I also didn't like my job. I liked my boss. So it's how do we deal with that? How do we move forward quicker?
Thank you very much for sharing. And the reason I think that we are not prepared for the emotions is because you probably also, and I'm making a guess here now, that you were also anticipating and having to find a new job and all the logistics and the worries about the future. So these emotions can overshadow your grief. And then when it happens, it sort of becomes real and it lands really heavy. I think acknowledging that this is grief is one of the first things that we can do, rather than trying to keep busy and like downplaying it, because I think sometimes we have to hit sort of rock bottom to bounce off this. And if it's like a child that's like, mom, 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 and it's tucking on your t-shirt and wants to tell you something important, you're like, yeah, in a minute, in a minute. The child will not stop telling you because it's really important for them. If you stop and like really listen and listen to yourself, and maybe you have people who can support you in that. Being acknowledged is so important. We want to be heard, we want to be seen, we don't want to be fixed. And it's a process. And if it becomes too painful, then I would always suggest to ask for counseling through your GP, or I don't know where in the world you are because it's international, but or work with a coach or grief specialist. Journaling is really good as well. Just have there is a process my friend explained to me, doodling. So you take a white, like no lines on the paper, and you put in the middle a question or something you want to explore, like a statement, not like an affirmation, like, I'm a millionaire, so nothing, but like, I really miss my boss, or I'm heartbroken, or so. And then you just start to doodle, like when you're on the phone and you make like little squirrels and stuff like that. And then you listen if there are any words coming up, and you just plonk them on the paper, because they're often the hidden things we can't admit to ourselves. And that's a process between doodling and journaling. And it's really surprising the things that come up, the emotions that come up. So I would just also sit with the pain and not try, like I said, don't try to busy it away, and talk to that part inside you that was employed and is now maybe feeling lost and sad, because you, as the adult of your life, you got this. And if there's no one else you feel you can share this with yourself. So there's inner parts theory, and I can't explain too much about this, but we have different, you heard about the inner child, maybe inner teenager. So we have all these different parts and roles. And there is a employee inside you who is probably really sad, and just take some time, make a cup of tea and sit with yourself and acknowledge, without trying to make it better in that moment. Oh, I will find another job. It's like, that's not the point. It's like, really miss my boss. I hope that was helpful and resonated with you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I'll try that today. Today I dedicated to grief for that, and then continue.
And thank you for doing this service for yourself.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Thank you so much.
We'll move on with the next question, which is by Cynthia. Cynthia, would you like to unmute yourself and
I think it's
share?
easier than reading the whole thing. Okay, I have a client I've been working with for quite a while now. I started with her because she wanted me to help her with her grief because her mom died. I was still new at coaching, so I know that we cannot deal with very big emotions. So I worked with her on other things in her life that she has issues with, in terms of her personality, her confidence, her work. But every now and then the grief pops up. The problem with her grief is that it's related to her mom's death. Her mom died a few years ago. The circumstances in which her mom died was the annoying part to her, because her mom was diagnosed with cancer, but she did not know only after her death, because her brothers felt that she's very sensitive and she might react in a very emotional way. So they did not tell her. And so she feels anger towards her brother, grief towards her mom, because she was not there for her all the time. And at the same time, she feels guilty. So these are all the emotions that she feels at the same time. And I want to try to help her. I just don't know how regarding that matter.
Yeah. So David Kessler does a very good training on grief for parents, and I would suggest that she attends this. There are two elements of this. So one is the feeling guilty, and feeling guilty is not really an emotion. So if you do something, you're found guilty in a court of law. because you accidentally or deliberately broke the law and you harmed someone. And the emotion should be remorse, maybe, or sadness. So I would ask her, did you try to harm your mother? Did you try to harm anybody else? Of course, people say, oh, no, I didn't try to harm anybody. So guilt is a replacement, because if we feel guilty, we also feel powerful. We feel like, if I had done this, then that wouldn't have happened. Because to admit that we are actually really powerless, that someone gets cancer, that someone dies, is too threatening for the brain. So it's easier to feel guilt than to say, I was helpless in this situation. I had no control over my brother. I had no control over my mom getting cancer and dying. And that's something that needs to be processed, because if I'm helpless with my mom, what else I'm helpless? Oh my God, I could get cancer. My kids could get cancer. So it's a lot for the brain to acknowledge. So the brain is trying to help us. So it wants to feel guilty, because then we can imagine, if I had done something differently, I had a different outcome. And that, as weird as it sounds, seems to give us a feeling of power. So that's on guilt. The other thing with her brother is, that's something David Kessler teaches, and I love it. He says, stay in your lane. So he says there are 3 lanes, like driving. Your lane, the other person's lane, and God's lane, or the universe or so. The universe in God's lane is earthquakes and fires, and, we can't control this. And then there's other people's lanes. If I keep staying angry with other people, I'm in their lane. What the brother did, I have no control over. So I worked for 4 years as a mental health support worker. So a lot of the knowledge I encompass is from mental health. And it just eats us up, because again, there is this idea, if I could have forced, or like if I could have done something, or my relationship would have been better, or if I hadn't been so sensitive, then maybe things would have been different. So we need to stay in our lane. And it's the grief of missing the mom. And that's where, like, reading the book, The Grieving Brain, or working with someone, it needs to be processed, because time doesn't heal. We can adapt our lives, and people do this all the time because they have to. But for some people, there is like no time has passed, and it's Mother's Day coming up, is their birthday coming up, is Christmas coming up, and every time they get reminded. And I don't know, is that sort of the answer you were after? Yeah.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Kalamadi. Would you like to unmute yourself and share that, please?
Hi, yeah, thank you. Finding this really interesting and inspiring. So I'm keen to hear you say something about helping people when there's either sort of low mood or a deeper depression that lasts longer. As it seems sort of understandable that people would go through some low mood, and sort of normal in a way. So I wouldn't want to suggest in a way there's something wrong with that. But how to know when it's, needing help sort of beyond coaching? I suppose I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
You're touching on something that I find really concerning. So there is like the prolonged grief disorder now. And unfortunately, the medical establishment has put a time limit on how long you should grieve. And it was first 6 months, and now it's 12 months, and it's absolute rubbish. My friend is still grieving the loss of her son, who died in 2012. Any changes in behavior, and that comes more from my suicide prevention training, like people stop eating, they stop making self-care, their appearance change, they don't wash their clothes, they don't shower anymore. There's a really good free training. It's called Safe Talk, and it helps you to recognize certain language people use when they go into like more of a crisis. And it's when people say things like, they're better off without me. So that's the most dangerous part, when they feel like they're just a burden with their grief on someone, or yeah, what's the point? So really language about feeling hopeless and helpless. And that's the problem. The GP often, because they have 10 minutes to talk to us, maybe 5 minutes, and then they write the report. But it's easier to medicate someone and say, oh, you suffer from depression, when they're actually grieving. Because my background is mental health and grief, in my coaching, I can help those people. But I think if you personally feel, oh, I'm a bit out of my league, that's already enough to suggest then please talk to your GP or so. Because at the end of the day, safeguarding is everybody's business. We all have a duty of care, and grievers have real problems concentrating, their learning is impacted. And if we have the coaching, we want people, normally I follow T-GROW, so we have a topic and a goal, and we check what are the options, is it realistic, and who, what, where can help you with this. But if you don't move on, they come every week with the same issue, then you might want to have a break and for them to address this. And also, again, don't be afraid to ask, do you think we're moving on here, or do you think we should maybe have a little break and you deal with this? On the other hand, though, you might be the only person who they can confine in this. So you could actually park the coaching for a while and just be that heart with ears, because if they don't have anybody else, just be able to share with you what bothers them. You don't always have to just have your coaching hat on and think, oh my God, I didn't help them with their goal. You might have just helped them with being there, and that's enough. And then after maybe 2-3 months, they go, do you know what? Thank you. And that was really good that I could discuss this with you, and I would like to return to coaching. So open communication, and also not being afraid to say, you know what, that's outside my scope now. I would like to refer you to someone else. Does this
Thank you.
resonate with you?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just respond if that's okay. I think that's very in line with my own instincts, what you've just said. Yeah, so I've been coaching 20 years actually, and yeah, I think that is my tendency to help people find their way, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
I use T-GROW loosely as well, but I think it's all about just responding to the human being, really.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you.
And also my Buddhist training of years really, really helps. I think there's a lot of pathologizing of low mood, which really doesn't help as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question comes from Stephanie Carbert. Stephanie, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hi, Teresa. I literally wanted to just get down. You said a phrase, feelings internalized, and then I didn't catch the second part.
Never expressed.
Thank you.
So we say we are fine, F-I-N-E, so feelings internalized, never expressed.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you so much. Very informative.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
And the next remark is from Teresa. I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. It's more of a remark, if I gauge this correctly. She shares, are we not connecting with the real global grief regarding climate crisis? So, Teresa, would you like to elaborate a bit more?
Yes, hi. Thank you. It's been very interesting conversation. Yeah, look, I mean, I feel it myself already. You know, right down to nature aspects that have been lost, and I feel that sense of grief myself. But I just wonder, let's say, in a process of trying to help bring greater awareness, you know, in conversations with clients, I feel we have that responsibility as well. You know, are we really, are we ourselves as coaches and our clients really acknowledging the loss that we feel now and the loss that we'll feel later if we don't do something.
I think what you just said resonates with me because I've got young adult children. So I've got twins, they're 27 soon, and a son who's 23. And in them, I see that their young adult years are completely different to what my young adult years were, like completely oblivious to things that you just mentioned. In mental health, we talk about client-led and person-centered. So I personally, as a coach, I would follow the client to see if that's a subject for them or not. In my private time, then I'm like an advocate of these things. I'm open door for people like my children or their friends or anybody else who wants to approach this. And I think it doesn't really matter what subject it is. Whatever pains people, let's be a heart with ears, and also emotionally honest, sharing what our thoughts are on there. And I feel it, because the spoken word is only 7%. The rest is your body language, your tone of voice, your facial expression. And I found if I approach things with curiosity, because you can always encounter someone who has completely opposite opinion and they're a bit of a warpath, and no matter what I will say, they will not hear me. So I try to approach everybody with a bit curiosity and stay in my lane again. What can I do? Where can I change my behavior? Where can I make a difference? Because sometimes ignorance is bliss. Life is hard for people, and some global events can be so overwhelming that I personally, for my own mental and physical health, I have to choose not to engage with that, not to read anything with this. And that might sound for some people like, oh, you're just ignoring this, so you're part of the problem. But I know that what I can do is in my little corner with the energy I have. And I never know what the other person's circumstances are. And yeah, if we all are curious and do our best, that's my personal approach. I don't know if that resonates with you. I think
And up next,
sorry,
sorry.
yeah.
I was about to say that Rachel has a question.
Hi there, thank you for your session. That was really interesting. I just wanted to touch a wee bit on how you would explain when people are grieving, like grieving something they've never had. So if they're not able to have a baby or they've not got married, because there's not that physical loss there, like a job or a person, how would you describe that? Is it the loss of the vision they had, or?
So I would say that comes a bit under disenfranchised grief, because people don't really want to hear, or like it makes them feel uncomfortable themselves, and we are not used to this. And I would ask people about their hopes and dreams and expectations. That's just like a phrase we use a lot.
Yeah.
Everybody, I think, who makes a decision to go into a career, to get married, or have a partner, to have kids, you have an idea beyond that, isn't it? It just doesn't start, oh, I want a kid or so. It's like you have certain reasons why you have this. So not having this means maybe now I have to rethink my life. Maybe I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and I thought I have a house full of kids, and then it doesn't happen. So what else do I do with my life? So it's not only that I'm grieving and people say, oh, you can't grieve what you don't have or don't know. Oh no, you can grieve what you wanted and didn't receive. But then it's even more, because I have to totally change the trajectory of my life, almost my identity. If I saw my identity as a mom, I'm not a mom now. Who else am I? And that can be a crisis. And I think grief and loss deserves our respect and our effort and our time. And we are always so quick to rush from one state to another, from one decision to another. And that's where we can help each other to acknowledge this without trying to fix the other person and giving them this logical, helpful, like, oh, you can adopt. And you're like, yeah, you're right, but you're missing the point. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I just wanted to confirm how to approach it in the term that, because I certainly understand and believe that that is still grief. You're still grieving something that you absolutely don't have, or you're not able to have. And it's just, yeah, it was just about how to approach that. But it was interesting you said about the change of identity. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Again, giving people a safe space where they can share, that's it, and asking for more information.
I would like to check if there are any last-minute questions from anyone. All right, so I will insert TJ's LinkedIn profile link. She shared that she's very happy to connect with you all. And TJ, thank you so much for being with us today, exploring hidden grief, helping us understand and giving us some tools to support non-death losses. We've had so many key takeaways, from recognizing and validating non-death grief to identifying signs and symbols and applying practical support strategies to help anyone who is dealing with grief these days. Thank you so much. Is there anything additional that you would like to add for our audience today?
I just want to thank you for interviewing me, and because I'm always really excited to be able to share this. And I saw that you put the title and the author of the book. That was really helpful. Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you for anybody who came, because, you know, that's always a bit nerve-wracking when you want to share and then you don't know anybody coming or not. So thank you everybody for coming and for your questions. And if you have any other questions and you think like, oh my God, I wish I would have asked this, then please get in touch and let me know. Take care.
Thank you. I've also inserted the link to your website, so please feel free to take that away. And I see a lot of thank yous here in the chat box. It's been a pleasure hosting you once more. Thank you everyone who joined. And feel free to join the other 2 masterclasses that we have later today. And see you in a bit, hopefully. Take care.